Hey guys, so I got to tell you a story about that pile of snow. The reason we pile it up instead of dumping it in the ocean, which is what they used to do in Juneau. When you got an ocean that does not freeze, and you've got trucks covered with, filled with snow, mixed with pea gravel, that we don't use salt on here, and even if we did, we just used to dump it into the ocean, because we got plenty of places you can just drive up to the dock and back your dump truck up and dump away. This is out towards the glacier. I'm not going to talk about the glacier, but if you come up here, it's not going to be much worse than this. It's 5:50 p.m. on October 14th, and believe it or not, we've still got a ship that's coming in, 2 of them, I believe, and it doesn't. I think they only get here at 1. So if you come here, you're only going to get about 5 hours of sunlight. Anyway, it used to be we just dumped the snow over into the channel. And the most convenient spot for downtown Juneau is right where one of the cruise ships dock. Along comes May, and the first cruise ship to come in was a full-size Holland America ship. Not quite as big as the ones even Holland America has now, but it was one of the bigger ships. It tied up to that dock, the people got off, and the tide went out. And when it got pretty low, the ship listed over to the side. The ship captain, everybody was terrified. They called up the Coast Guard. They got everybody they could. They put divers down, and they found that the gravel from all of that snow had piled up underneath of the ship. And so they looked at that. The ship squished it down, but it took hours for the ship to come back up, and they were getting everybody off the ship, and they had to do an inspection, and it actually put a ding in the bottom of the ship. There you go. There's your glacier. Yeah, this isn't a glacier story. But hey, when you live here, every time you drive by the glacier, you got to look at the glacier. So I figure you probably want to see it, even if I do have better channels, there are better shots of that Mendenhall Glacier elsewhere. So here we go. So anyway, Holland America was livid. The Coast Guard was livid. The city said mea culpa, and the ship was able to sail away. They let everybody get back on. It wasn't that big of a deal. And a week later, that ship came back. And the city said, oh, don't worry. It looks like it's all dispersing. Bump, bump, bump. Sorry about that. It is bear country, too. Not that we're likely to see any, but there are bears that live right here. And so I can't see anything any better than you can, but that's it. This is Juneau. This is what you might get any time of the year. It's just getting dark. So the ship came back a week later, tied up to the same dock, and the tide was a little bit lower, and the same thing happened. It was the lowest tide of the year at that spot. And so it only leaned over a tiny little bit, but they were paying attention. It didn't do any damage the second time. It didn't have to get fixed right then. They could dry dock it later. But the city got lashing, and they ended up finding that a couple of concrete barriers were buried down in that gravel pile, and that's why it didn't disperse out like it should have. Those big barriers they might put in between 2 lanes of traffic so one lane can't go into the other. They pulled those out with a crane, and then they checked very, very carefully, and they made sure the next week the ship didn't actually tie up, but they checked to see how deep it was, and it's been fine ever since. They've actually moved the dock out since then so the bigger ships can tie up to the same dock. Anyway, that's why we have that man-made glacier. Ciao, stay warm and dry, and I hope you have extra tufts.